The Secrets of Doctor Who is brought to you by the Star Quest Production Network and is made possible by our many generous patrons. If you'd like to support the podcast, please visit sqpn.com/give. You're listening to The Secrets of Doctor Who, episode 114.
One day, I shall come back.
That's it. I've been renewed.
Is when a Time Lord's body wears out, he regenerates.
I'm a Time Lord. I'm not a human being. I walk in eternity.
Braveheart.
Change, my dear, and it seems not a moment too soon.
Unlimited rice pudding.
Physician healers.
Wearing a bit thin.
Fantastic.
I am Scottish. I can complain about things.
Ta-da! Ooh. Should be fine.
Hi, I'm Dom Bethinelli, and you're listening to The Secrets of Doctor Who, where we discuss everything about the hit BBC series, Doctor Who. Today we're discussing the third Doctor story, The Ambassadors of Death. I have to say it in that voice. Joining me today on the panel are Father Corey Stika. Hi, Father Corey.
How's it going, Dom?
And Jimmy Aiken. Hi, Jimmy.
Howdy, Dom.
Folks, remember to like The Secrets of Doctor Who on Facebook. Retweet us on Twitter, where we're at SQPN. Leave us comments, subscribe in iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, TuneIn, your favorite podcast app, or on YouTube, where you should hit the bell to get notifications. And above all, share the podcast with your friends to help us grow our community, reach more listeners in this period between seasons. We want to reach out to folks and say, hey, we're still here. We're giving you great content. There's some interesting stuff we're talking about. Get your Doctor Who fix, that sort of thing. So please share it with others, especially if you can write a review on iTunes. That's or any other podcast directory. That's a big help. Another little bit of news, show news. If you go to sqpn.com/Doctor Who, you can click on a link there to the new Doctor Who store. We're going to be putting up links to various DVDs, like seasons, individual episodes. Like there's a DVD or Blu-ray of Resolution up there, the latest New Year's Day episode. We'll put a link. I'm not sure if I put the link to the Shada DVD up there when we talked about Shada. Those sorts of things. We're going to be putting links to books and DVDs and seasons and all that sort of stuff there so if you go to sqpn.com/Doctor Who, you can find the link there. And anything you buy after you click that link that you buy at Amazon, it helps support the network and the show and helps us continue on. So that little business done. There's some news. I got a couple things, and I know Jimmy's got something, but I'll just throw these two bits out there first. David Tennant, the 10th Doctor, has a new podcast. That's right. The Doctor's podcasting, and he's going. It's called David Tennant Does a Podcast with ... ellipsis. So, and it's basically going to be him interviewing friends. Mostly many of them are famous stars that like Olivia Colman, who was his co-star in Broadchurch, and Ian McKellen, who was Gandalf, and lots of people like that. But of immediate interest is he's going to be interviewing Jodie Whittaker. So the 10th Doctor will be interviewing the 13th Doctor. Wait, yes, 13th. I get mixed up on the numbers sometimes because I get seasons and doctors. So
that could be pretty interesting. I mean, especially if they do talk about their experiences on Doctor Who. But David Tennant, come on, man, you could get him up with a little more original title than that.
He is not putting a lot of effort into that title. So apparently there's a single introductory episode up there, and so it should be interesting to check that out. Any Doctor Who fan is going to be interested in this. Funny enough, the Twitter the tweet that went out to announce it was from his wife Georgia, who we all know is the Doctor's daughter and also
Jenny.
the Doctor's daughter.
Yes,
she's the wife of David Tennant, the daughter of
Peter Davison.
Peter Davison.
His first name, I lost it for a second there. Peter Davison, who was the fifth Doctor, etc. You know all that.
And she played the Doctor's daughter.
And then she played the Doctor's daughter. So very interesting way of all those things connecting. So, Jimmy, I did have that other bit of news, which is very short, which is that Series 12, Season 12 has started filming with the Jodie Whittaker and the other companions that we know. Everyone's returned, and they're in South America.
Ooh,
which is
filming or
yes, they're in. I'm sorry, South Africa, not South America.
South Africa, okay.
South Africa to film, which is also the way they filmed Rosa and parts of Ghost. So who knows? Who knows what that means? But they're headed south again. So excuse me, I'm sorry, Jimmy. You had some news as well.
Yeah, so I thought I'd give a little mini review of a Big Finish box set that just came out this month. It's the Diary of River Song Series 5. And what's fascinating about it is they themed it this time with the Master. So we've seen the River Song encountering the Doctor at different points in his timeline. And now we have a box set where 4 one-hour plays, essentially, where River Song encounters the Master at different points in the Master's timeline. And it's a lot of fun. The first of the plays, which is called the Bechdel Test, is between River and Missy, and with Michelle Gomez as Missy, and the scene where River realizes who Michelle Gomez is really nice. It's really nicely done. So she had never encountered the Master, and especially not Missy on the show. So it's a nice first meeting for the two of them. The title is an allusion to a famous test that is applied to movies. A film is held to pass the best Bechdel test if it has 2 women in it who hold a conversation about something other than a man. and so here you have these 2 women, and what they have in common is the Doctor, and because of reasons, they can't talk about the Doctor. Now, they actually do a little bit. There are people trying to get them to talk about the Doctor, but they're resisting talking about the Doctor. And so that's the irony of the title. The second of the plays features Jeffrey Beavers as the Master, and he was the burned up corpse-like Master in The Keeper of Traken. And he's done a lot for Big Finish before. He is very suave and calculating. His stuff as the Master in Big Finish is really good. He even recently wrote his own play, what he would do as the Master, and it was a lot of fun. The third one has Eric Roberts as the Master. He was originally the Master in the 1996 TV movie, and he's been widely panned as the worst Master ever from that movie. This is only the second time he's played the Master, and he is so much better. He's been given decent material to work with, and he's not playing it over the top. He actually comes across in a lot of ways as the most reasonable of all of the Masters. In fact, he's so reasonable, River doesn't even realize who he is for a long time.
Interesting.
And then finally, we have Sir Derek Jacobi as the Master in the last installment. He was the Master immediately in David Tennant's era at the end of the world, immediately before regenerating into John Sims. And he's the War Master. So he's the Master during the course of the Time War. And he also comes across as very suave, but a little more manic.
Yeah. He actually did a bunch of Big Finish audio as the War Master, didn't he?
Yes. They have a box set out as the War Master. They've worked him into Unit. They've worked him into River Song. So he's doing a good bit of work for them right now.
Yeah, we keep threatening to do a special episode of Secrets of Doctor Who on the essential Big Finish productions. And probably the only reason we haven't done it yet is because it's such a big, how do we narrow it down? Because it all sounds so good.
I mean, they've been producing audio for 20 years now. Doctor Who audio for something 20 years now.
They have audio with David Tennant before David Tennant was the Doctor. He plays some parts in Big Finish.
That's amazing.
But this set is a lot of fun. I've been making a study of Big Finish's Master related material recently, and this set's a lot of fun.
All right, so that's a little preview precursor to our main topic, which is this third Doctor story, John Pertwee story called "The Ambassadors of Death." So this aired in March to May 1970. It was 7 parts, 7 episodes, and it was the third story for the third Doctor. So it was just the very early days in his run.
So that means it's the 9th?
Or are we
3 squared?
3 squared or 6? I'm not sure how that worked,
okay.
But there's some math in there somewhere. And his companion in this one is still Liz, and I have to say, Liz is continues to be quite capable. I enjoy their repartee and her work in this. She breaks out the French, and she's got she tries almost escapes from the bad guys. She
takes charge of like a bad guy who's kind of on the road to reform and starts planning and telling him what to do and stuff. She's very capable. She reminds me. It struck me during this watching this one that she's kind of a replacement for the second Doctor's companion Zoe, who had been there up until 3 stories before this. And Zoe was a young woman from the 21st century, late 21st century, who was very smart and, I mean, really preternaturally smart, and kind of was a rival for the Doctor in terms of intelligence. And they've taken away the rival aspect. So Liz isn't really the Doctor's rival, but she is very, very smart. And rumor is that's part of why they got rid of her, because she was too competent. Yeah. So she only lasted a season.
Yeah, that's kind of a shame that she was there and she was almost a little too good, and they decided now let's bring in the eye candy instead with
Joe Grant.
Yeah,
but it worked with Zoe, so I don't know why it shouldn't have worked with Liz. I think Liz is fine.
So the story itself involves a near future story. So this gets into that whole question of the
unit dating controversy.
Right. Yeah. Could you recap that for us?
Sure. So the unit stories were filmed beginning in not like 1969, but aired in 1970 and so forth, and early in the 70s. But there are indications in the stories that they're set in the near future. And a few seasons down the line, Sarah Jane Smith is going to say she's from 1980, even though it was like 1974 or 1975 when she said that. And so this story has evidence of it being in the near future, because they've apparently had like 7 Mars missions where people have been to Mars 7 times, and that had not happened in 1970. It still hasn't happened. But that would be an indication for the original 1970 audience that this is near future. Unfortunately, they didn't consistently maintain the idea that it was in the near future, and they also slipped in references that implied they were being filmed in contemporary 1970s time. And so that's led to a controversy of, do the unit stories occur in the 70s or the 80s? And they actually winked at that in the Day of the Doctor, the 50th anniversary special, where the Brigadier's daughter, the new head of unit, is talking to her assistant and wants her to look up something from this era, and says, you'll find it listed under the 70s or the 80s, depending on the filing convention.
Right, that's right. So, as you mentioned, so the story revolves around these Mars missions, and so at the beginning we see the 7th Mars mission is coming back, and the way it works apparently is that it rendezvous with a spacecraft in Earth orbit called Recovery. So you have Mars 7 and Recovery 7.
And the reason they've sent that up is because when the astronauts blasted off from Mars, they immediately went radio silent and have not been heard all this time. So Recovery is like a rescue ship to try to get them from their own, because apparently they're not going to be able to land it on their own.
Right. And it's a British space agency. That's the other aspect of it. Although it's somewhat international, there's a French scientist and I think a Russian or German. The accent was a little slippery there. But
well, and of course, it's interesting that they chose to do it as a Mars mission, because this aired literally 9 months after
The moon mission.
Americans landed on the moon for the first time, so of course the US is going to the moon, so the UK has got to go one better and go to Mars. But so this was something that would have been very much in people's imagination at that time,
right,
of this going to other planets and having these missions. And the pods looked very similar to the Apollo style pods and things like that, so people could, although the chairs look more like barber chairs than actual flight chairs.
Some of the set dressing was a bit a little backlot junkyard versions of things. Although they do a lot of running around outdoor filming, I have to say that. So when this ship connects with Recovery 7, there's difficulties, and then they lose contact with that one and the astronaut on that ship. There's a this transmission that's a painful noise, and that's when the doctor and unit get called in because the doctor was watching it on TV and and he recognized that it's some kind of communication.
Yeah, it's also a kind of audience identification moment, because watching space stuff on TV was exactly what loads of people had just been doing.
Right.
Exactly.
So one interesting thing about that, by the way, at this point in that episode, the Doctor had the TARDIS console out of the TARDIS, so we don't see the TARDIS at all in this episode. Like, it is not present in any form in this, except for the console.
Blue box. The blue box is not there, and this continues into the next episode, Infernal, because he's trying to figure out what the Time Lords did to it so that he can't travel, and so he's trying to fix it again.
Yeah,
and that's
the
why
console.
you have that scene where they're flashing in and out of 15 seconds ahead in time.
Yeah, it's actually quite. I mean, it's a little bit 4-dimensional here, because he and Liz are like, as he's fiddling with the console, they're flipping. He flips Liz 15 seconds into the future, and they're kind of playing tag with each other over a period of a few seconds, catching up with each other in time.
Yeah, that was clever. Yeah,
the fact that the console is out of the TARDIS is going to play a big role in the next serial, because as a result of his continuing to fiddle with it, he's going to flip not just 15 seconds into the future, but into a parallel universe.
Oh, oops. This is why I don't repair my own appliances. Well,
a parallel universe with the Brigadier without a mustache.
Oh yeah, where the royal family has all been shot, and it's like,
and he has an eye patch.
Yeah.
Oh, I can't wait for that one.
We'll get to Infernal, but that's one of my favorites from the Pertwee era.
Me too. It's a lot of fun.
Oh, cool. So they tracked this signal that where it was going. So it came from space, but a return signal came from this abandoned warehouse 7 miles from the space center in London, which is quite convenient for them because it's so nearby. And long story short, because they kind of drag out this story over 7 episodes. It could probably been about an hour and a half. Yeah.
You could cut out Bessie breaking down. You could cut out the car chase. You could a couple of car chases.
A couple of escapes.
More than a couple, yeah. So in this case, there's this gun battle at the warehouse. It was kind of funny to watch, because one of my favorite moments was the Brigadier, crouching behind cover, stands up so that he's exposed from the waist up, and then fires from his waist. Why not just shoot over the box? Why are you shooting from the hip? It was just funny. And then some of the fighting action was they didn't spring for stuntmen, so it looked really like stage fighting. They
did kind of, because there's a action group called Havoc, who this was their first episode that they were in. Throughout the Pertwee era, would show up as unit soldiers.
Oh, okay.
In these action scenes. So a lot of these action scenes, it was this group Havoc who would show up. So it's from this point on, when you see a bunch of unit soldiers getting gunned down, it's this Havoc group.
It's like a stuntman group.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. And that doesn't stop some of the action in this from looking really fake, though. I remember there was one moment where a scientist takes a gut punch, and it's clear the gut punch does not connect.
Yes.
It looked like a Captain Kirk gut punch.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. There was another fight outdoors where someone takes a swing, and they just it's obviously it doesn't connect, and he goes flying, rolling down a hill, and it
oh yeah.
So, but it's also this is what it looked like on TV back these days. This is what, we didn't have the high standards we have today.
Well, I brought up Star Trek because, of course, this was shortly after the original series Star Trek.
Yes.
And the action looked very similar in that. So, I mean, this is contemporary. I mean, this isn't.
Yes, this is not a knock on Doctor Who specifically, just from a perspective of 40 years plus on. So
I was kind of struck by later on in the series. At one point, they're at unit headquarters or whatever, and they need a car to go to fight the bad guys, and they don't have one. And Benton says, "Well, there's the Doctor's car," and they take Bessie to a gun battle.
They get the guns hanging out the side. That was awesome. They get soldiers hanging out.
Priceless of that though. He just kind of "Are you kidding me?"
That was very funny to see the that. Well, and there's we also see Bessie at another point has this very interesting anti-theft system where if you turn it on, whoever's touching the car at that moment gets stuck to the car and they cannot get loose. And the Doctor uses that to good effect to temporarily capture some bad guys.
Yeah, Bessie is kind of a paradox in that it's an old-fashioned car. It's like an old roadster, but the Doctor's tricked it out with all this future stuff, so it's like a retro future car.
Yes. It's like it's a James Bond car. Basically, it's got all the gimmicks and stuff. We get a glimpse in this gun battle that the people that they're fighting are not aliens, as far as we know, unless they're human looking. We find out later on that they're not, but it turns out that they are, in fact, at least the leader of them is this General Carrington. He's and he is an astronaut. He had gone on one of the earlier Mars probes and is now the head of security for the space agency and is actively cooperating with whatever is going on, this mystery in space with these ambassadors of death.
Yeah. So
he said that he's head of security actually for the space agency. Actually, he was the head of space security. So he was Donald Trump's Space Force before Donald Trump proposed it.
Okay.
We should explain who the ambassadors of death are. So when they finally recover the initial spacecraft, these guys in spacesuits get out and they never take their helmets off, and they're sucking up radiation like crazy. In fact, way more than any human being could stand, and they need radiation to survive. And you can't see into their helmets. Their helmets are clouded over, and everybody at first assumes something really weird has happened to the astronauts, and they're lumbering around, and they're very menacing, and they can kill people just by touching them or touching things that the people are touching. Yep. It's like an electric shock jumps. If you're holding a gate and they touch the gate, you'll get shocked to death. And with these faceless spacesuits, I thought it was very effectively creepy. They later reused that in
Silence in the Library.
Silence in the Library. They also reuse it in the River Song, Lake Silencio stuff, where you have the creepy spacesuit coming out of the
Impossible
lake.
Astronaut. Yep.
Right. And they use it in other things like Scooby-Doo. So a faceless spacesuit can be very effectively creepy. And here we've got 5 of them. And these are the ambassadors. We eventually learn that they are they're not humans. They're actually aliens, apparently from Mars. They don't seem to be ice warriors. They never establish exactly what they are.
Right.
But they are apparently Martians, and they've been sent to, they're keeping our astronauts up in orbit while they send the ambassadors down to make peaceful relations with us. And they've sent who turns out to be the bad guys, the plans for a limited translator device, which the bad guys are then using to make the ambassadors kill people. And once the Doctor builds a full translator, he learns that the ambassadors don't know why they're being asked to kill people. They're very upset about this, but they're going along with it. And it turns out the reason the bad guys are doing this is because Carrington believes the aliens are up to no good. And so he's trying to provoke the nations of the Earth into attacking the alien mothership in orbit. And that's his plot. He's genuinely trying to protect mankind. He thinks he's doing the right thing.
Yeah, so Carrington on his trip to Mars as an astronaut and first encountered these aliens, and that's when he set this plan in motion for peaceful relations. But he apparently was trying to dupe them into it. And it's an interesting twist on the alien invasion story, because for a large portion of this story, we are led to believe that bad aliens are coming, and they're killing humans, and they're going to apparently invade, and we have to stop them. And then it gets flipped on its head at some point, where it's the humans that are the bad guys, or some of the humans.
And then
one
even
in particular,
even the human bad guys aren't bad; they're just misguided.
Right. Well, you ended up with three groups, and Carrington was kind of playing all of them. Where, of course, you had the Space Center people with the Doctor and the Brigadier.
Yep.
You had the Sir James and their security people, and then you had the robber, the guy who was running the underground cavern there, where they were holding the
ambassadors.
The ambassadors.
Yep.
Yeah.
Ambassadors. Yeah. So you really had kind of three groups, and the general was playing all three of them against each other.
What was Sir James the head of again? I forget. He was
kind of like the space agency.
Oh, Sir James Quinlan. Yeah, he was like a government official in charge of space stuff.
Okay. So he was sort of the oversight for it. Right.
Yeah.
And at one point, the Doctor kind of mistrusts him, because Sir James knows that they're aliens, but he thinks that it's being set up for him to get credit for making contact and making peace with the aliens. So Carrington's playing him. Carrington's playing the bad guys who are holding the ambassadors, who then are playing General Carrington. That bad guy wants to use them to rob banks, which is just funny. And then it goes on, and this whole circle of things. It's a complex story, I have to say, and having 7 episodes to kind of play it out does keep it from getting too windy in a short space.
It was still, I thought, kind of confusing at first. Eventually, of course, as the threads started to play them out, it got a lot less confusing. But it was very confusing at first. One character we haven't mentioned, by the way, is Lennox, the disgraced professor who was helping kind of keep them alive and learn about these aliens, and who Liz Shaw eventually befriends.
Yeah, he was working for the bad guys and was having that, as Jimmy had mentioned, he was having that change of heart. That it was going to go back to the Brigadier and reveal all, and then was killed by his conspiracy.
Was basically nuked.
Yeah. So at one point,
go ahead. By the way, there's something interesting. I assume y'all noticed it, but there's something interesting about the way they do the credits in this episode. And I don't think they've done this before. At least I haven't noticed it. But they start by playing the Doctor Who opening credits, with John Pertwee's face and the time vortex and everything. Then we have the opening of the story, and then we have a mini credit sequence. Right. Where they throw up a graphic, and then the words "The Ambassadors" comes up, and then "Of Death." And when "Of Death" comes up, they play this cheesy little electronic noise. Right. And so we kind of get like 2 credit sequences in.
Yeah, it was very different the way they did that. I don't remember them. I mean, there was things like the War Games where they would have battle going on behind the title War Games and stuff like that. But as far as actually having the cliffhanger and then the opening sequence again, I don't remember them doing that before or after.
Yeah, it's that they replay that last scene from the previous episode. Although in at least one case I noticed, I don't know if it was every time, they redid the scene from a different angle. I don't know if you know so I don't know if they did it every time.
And I don't know if they did it every time here or not, but that was kind of standard TV production to just redo the cliffhanger scenes. I've recently been watching Dark Shadows, which it's on Amazon Prime, and I used to watch it when I was like 4 or 5 years old. I'd rush home from nursery school and watch it in the afternoon because it had vampires and werewolves on it. And it was a soap opera with vampires and werewolves. So, but I've noticed that they have the standard soap opera cliffhanger at the end of every episode, and then next episode they just reenact it every time.
Yeah.
It was probably easier for them just to start out with the cliffhanger and just keep going as they're acting them out instead of just cutting. Because I know there are episodes of Doctor Who where they start with the cliffhanger from the previous episode, but then they change the end of it as they move into the storyline for the next episode.
Right.
So it doesn't always line up exactly like the cliffhanger before.
It's glitches from the Time War.
Yeah,
exactly.
Right.
By the way, speaking of things that are kind of cheesy and don't make sense, this whole plot has a big hole in it, which is why don't, if you're sending ambassadors and you're aliens, maybe make radio contact first. Mm-hmm. And when you do send the aliens, send them with a fully functional translator, not just a translator that enables them to receive instructions to kill people.
Yeah.
Well, why send them in? Like, why do the replacement thing either? Why just land in your own spaceship? Yeah. Although maybe it was the idea was we don't want to cause a panic, so we're kind of sneaking them in to have talks with the governments first.
And that's Sir James kind of says that as, we don't want to reveal this. As I recall, I think there was some point where he says something like, we don't want to reveal this to the whole world and panic everyone.
Right. So
it was Carrington about ready to do Carrington was going to do the broadcast. That's what it was.
Yeah. At one point, the Doctor decides he has to go up into space because they to get to the Recovery 7 because to recover the astronauts, they had to send somebody up.
Yeah, so we get to see John Pertwee stretching his face to effect mock acceleration.
Right. He gets extra G's. Because he's a Time Lord and he can take it. So that was interesting seeing the Doctor go into space without the TARDIS. That was a new thing in this one. What else do we have? We had we had just all this back and forth about Carrington just so intent on making sure that you must be the bad guy and no, you must be the bad guy and always finding a way to distrust everybody. His paranoia rampant all over the place. It was very interesting to see that.
One scene I love is where he went to Geneva for the UN Security Council, and of course they did make a decision which is actually very accurate for the GN or the UN. So
yes. Yeah, and he's apparently back in an afternoon. That's one of the things about this is how quickly they travel everywhere.
Oh, he had a meeting in an hour in Geneva, leaving from London. Yeah, I'm sorry. Even with modern aircraft, you can't do that.
Right. There was an interesting moment where unit picks up the Doctor's SOS, and one of the unit soldiers says he's sending his. We hear his "Save Our Souls." Apparently, that's the origin of SOS. The Morse code.
Yes,
stands for "Save Our Souls"
or "Save Our Ship."
Right. It's probably originally "Save Our Ship."
See,
and then got acronyms.
It's originally Save Our Ship, but then as it got used on more than just ships, it became Save Our Souls.
We needed a different word with an S.
Yeah.
It's very interesting. The guards just at the Space Center have a very bad habit of answering the phone just after they let the bad guy out the gate. That was something I noticed happen multiple times. There's not much else. I mean, is there any other points that you want to bring up? I mean, it's a pretty straightforward story.
I just marvel at the little translator box that they've developed based on the plans the alien sent. It's got a dial, and you twist the dial and then press it to tell the aliens to do something. And you can give them the most amazingly complex instructions just by twisting that little dial and pressing it. Among the instructions you can give them are: walk into this secure facility, open all the doors you find, kill everybody you meet, sabotage the plant, open a safe, destroy its contents, and seal the room.
Yes. That is an incredibly dense language.
and the list of instructions were on one regular sheet. I guess it would be A4, whatever the British equivalent of letter sheet is.
Yes. That was good.
How about something on that dial about let's open trade negotiations or something like that?
Apparently, the Doctor also has the ability, perhaps a native ability, to transmigrate objects that he's holding. So at one point he enters a computer lab with the old-fashioned computer tape, and he's able to make it disappear from his hand and then reappear a moment later. Is quite an interesting trick. Is that new? Is that something the Doctor ever did before or after?
I don't remember seeing it otherwise. I assumed it was meant to just be like a magic trick.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was like, kind of like a large version of the quarters here and then it disappears.
Yeah. Although that's a very big thing to make disappear behind your hand.
Yeah.
But okay, so I mean, it would be interesting
if they accomplish it with stopping the camera and so forth.
Right.
But I think what they were going for was the Doctor's doing a magic trick.
Exactly.
Yeah, we did have a couple of pretty good green screen moments as well with the Doctor on the alien ship.
And that's new because this is previous to this season, just 4 stories ago, this was a black and white show, and now they're starting to use green screen already.
Right. Yeah, that was and it was effectively done again for the era, so that as he walked out, away from the ship, he did appear to be walking in this tunnel. I mean, and to be touching the floor. That was always one of the key tricks with green screen to the stage.
Yeah, the alien ship, which they say is enormous and half a mile wide, it looks like the Doomsday Machine from the Star Trek episode, The Doomsday Machine.
Yes, it does.
I also like when the Doctor finally meets the Earth astronauts, they're watching a little alien television set, and it's got alien stuff playing on it, but they're under a perception filter or something. They think they're on Earth watching a sports game. And they're like all watching the same sports game and agreeing on the scores with each other.
So I think, is there anything else you have on this one?
I got a couple of small things. Just through a lot of John Pertwee's era, actually through a lot of from John Pertwee's era onward, the Doctor's listed as a scientific advisor of UNIT. Well, in this, he was just the Brigadier's associate.
Yes,
he hadn't quite gotten the scientific advisor yet. Kind of a couple of car notes. There's a chase scene. Liz was being chased by a Ford Capri, which was the British was supposed to be the British version of the Mustang. So it was kind of like their pony car. The Mustang never made it over there, so it was a Ford Capri, which was kind of cool to see because you don't see those here in the States, that's for sure.
I like how during the car chase, and my first thought was a car chase. Oh joy! That means nothing will happen to advance the plot until this is over. Right. But in the car chase, I like how in the close-ups, Liz Shaw's floppy hat not only doesn't blow off, it doesn't even blow around.
Yeah, exactly. She's an open car, so
yeah.
And then the Brigadier takes off in that staff car, just sedan, and the engine takes bullets despite being a front-mounted engine, and all the bullets came from the back, and the Brigadier didn't get hit either. Figure that one out.
Magic bullets. It was, they got Oswald's magic bullets.
And then finally, Jim, you might have noticed this as well, but the Brigadier asked for a revolver. Of course, his gun had been taken. He asked for a revolver, and then the next scene, he's being shot with a regular semi-auto pistol.
Oh, I caught that one. He asked for, the revolver. Maybe the guy with it. Few little
just discrepancies I happened to notice.
It was interesting that chase with Liz, who ended up on a dam, on a river or pond of some sort, like running across this dam and them chasing her. It was a very odd sort of chase that ended with her
Liz runs like a girl, by the way.
She does, poor Liz.
A girl wearing high-heeled boots.
And a miniskirt. And she kind of topples over the edge of, for some reason, she's going over the edge of this railing at this dam. It wasn't that far to the water. I would have just dropped into the water and swam for it. But she got caught.
I want to know why she didn't. I mean, why does she even get out of the car? Because they've gotten in front of her with their car. Let's just back up and go around them.
Yeah,
this is you're going to be much more effective than trying to outrun them on foot. Cars can go a lot faster.
That's like when the Doctor uses Bessie, who I mentioned before, to stop the hijacked truck carrying the space capsule. And he's trying to get them to believe that his car died in the middle of the road sideways.
Yeah,
why was your car sideways?
Travel.
Where were you going sideways? I thought that was humorous there.
I have to say that Liz going over the side of the railing and then having to be helped up and captured by the bad guys far from the worst literal cliffhanger in Doctor Who history.
Yeah.
The absolute worst is in the seventh Doctor episode, Dragonfire, where the set just did not match what they had in the script. And so for no apparent reason, we have a literal cliffhanger where Sylvester McCoy climbs over a railing and hangs by his umbrella for no reason whatsoever.
He just literally walks to a railing and climbs over.
Yeah, and and it goes nowhere. And there's not like it's not like he's being forced to do this or anything. It just visually it makes no sense at all, but it's what the script said to do.
Interesting. But by the way, there are a couple of holes in the script. I mean, probably more than a couple. There was a moment where the Doctor and the Brigadier are in the Space Center. They've got the capsule in there now, and they've received this spurious order, presumably from Carrington, getting them to leave the room and leave the capsule unguarded. And they're like, "Oh, this capsule has been guarded the entire time from when it landed." And I'm like, does no one remember that big sequence where the thing was hijacked?
Yeah.
Where the bad guys were in control of this capsule in the truck for an extended period of time, which is presumably when the Ambassadors of Death were removed from it. So it's sloppy, just sloppy.
Yeah.
Guys. All right.
This was probably not one of our favorite John Pertwee episodes.
No, I mean,
no.
Which isn't to say it's terrible, but
it's not bad. It just wasn't great.
Yeah,
it's not great, but it does have some nice stuff in it. I like the way it effectively subverts the alien invasion trope. I like the way that it even gets us sympathetic in the end for Carrington. And I like the creepy, menacing spacesuits that, electrocute people to death. That's effectively scary.
Yeah,
I did like that at the end where Carrington kept repeating, it's my moral duty. It's my moral duty, to prevent them. Mm-hmm. And you kind of get the sense this guy's kind of got, something broken in him. And then it sort of explains some of what's going on here.
Also, notice that the bad guy is part of the British military. You know, that's something that for people weren't as skeptical of their own governments back then as they are now. And that's significant.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And also interesting that just as they resolve the problems with the aliens, the Doctor leaves them to let them talk to the mothership and settle things out. Mm-hmm. He doesn't stick around to work as an alien, to work with the aliens as a go-between or of any sort. He's like, okay, my work here is done. I'm out. Well, you guys have fun.
They didn't have enough money for the 8th negotiations episode.
That's true. And we're probably better off for it. All right, so I think that's all we have to say about this episode. I mean, like I said, there's a lot of interesting, good points. Not the best ever, but it's still worth watching, folks. And I have to say, I really enjoyed John Pertwee as the Doctor. It's my thing.
He's fun. Yeah.
So before we finish, I'd like to take a moment to thank our patrons who make it possible for us to create the Secrets of Doctor Who. Today, we want to especially thank by name Stephanie W., Ray Michelle L., Kathleen F., Clifton E., and Daniel D. Through their generous donations and the donations of all of our patrons at sqpn.com/give, they make it possible for us to continue the Secrets of Doctor Who and all the shows we do at sqpn.com. And you can join them by visiting sqpn.com/give. So that's it from us. What did you think of The Ambassadors of Death? If you got a chance to watch it, or once you do, let us know what you think. You can go to sqpn.com or the Secrets of Doctor Who Facebook page and leave us feedback on the show, particular episode there. You can send us an email to drwho@sqpn.com. And you can find links in our show notes at sqpn.com. And we'll be back next time when we'll be discussing the 10th Doctor story, The Lazarus Experiment. And talk about bad special effects. Just waiting to see that. Until then, Jimmy Akin, thank you for joining me and sharing the Secrets of Doctor Who.
Thank you, Dom.
Father Corey Stika, thank you as well.
Thank you, Dom.
And once again, I'm Dom Bettinelli. Thank you for listening to the Secrets of Doctor Who on StarQuest.
And remember, how many beans make 5?
Right. This is going to be fun.